today what we're going to do is we're going to go through the steps and the things you need to know for a small business to create their own continuity plan. And as long as I have your email address at the end, you're going to get the toolkit so you can do it yourself. Okay? How many of you were here for Hurricane Andrew? How about the 2004-2005 hurricane season? Because that was busy as hell too. Okay, yeah. So after you've gone through one, you learn. But sometimes, unless we want to learn without having to go through all those painful steps. You guys remember Mexico Beach? One guy planned ahead, and he was still standing. But where were all his neighbors? So it's planning for not just whether you're going to survive, but your business, your suppliers, and your customers. Nowadays, there's just so many more things to consider than even 10 years ago. We have active shooters. We have workplace violence. We have fires. We have theft. We have what is becoming a bigger concern lately is information technology issues, theft. There's all these things that your continuity plan covers all of it. People tend to fixate on a hurricane. Yes, a hurricane's a problem, no doubt about that. But that's not the only thing that you could potentially face. So your continuity plan gets you ready so that whatever it is, you've got a plan for that. Hopefully no pandemics. That would be bad. 1.15 trillion. Trillion with a T. Okay, since 1980 to 2010, the 30-year period, we lost $1.5 trillion because of extreme weather events. What would our GDP be if we had that? It's huge. It's a huge impact. And now they're expecting another trillion in coming years because of the increase. And as you know, the last few years, we aren't just getting a hurricane that's like category 1, we're getting the major hurricanes, 4, 5, which are more likely to cause a serious impact and a longer term recovery. They used to have only 4. Now they have level 5, and 5 was expanded up to a higher range of speed. And also, I notice a lot of people get confused. What's a watch and what's a warning? That's something that I hear. What is a watch or is a warning? So a watch is possibly you're going to have a problem in 48 hours, possibly. A warning is, oh, you're coming, here it comes. 36 hours from now, you're going to be dealing with events. So possibility as far as it's definitely coming to you. And of course, the extreme wind warning is if you were dealing with an eye wall, for example, 115 mile an hour, and that's only an hour out. So hopefully you already are where you need to be. On average, in the Atlantic Basin, we have 12 storms a year. 6 of them are hurricanes, and 3 of them are major. Now, hopefully, they all stay out at sea and bother the fishes and not us. But a half of the productivity in the United States is in coastal zones. So there's a large chunk of our GDP that's impacted by weather. And right now, August through October is the peak of hurricane season. And this is the new update they just gave us. So they said we were going to have more storms, but yet we have already passed 2 of our 6 months. So we have more stuff in 4 months. So the potential is that we might end up with some things that actually make it to land and bother us. Floods. $2 billion a year in flood damage. Be with it, billion. That's a huge amount of money that's going out the door. And a lot of people don't realize that your flood insurance is different from your windstorm and your homeowners. Those are separate policies. So if you have a windstorm, that doesn't mean it's going to cover, it definitely isn't going to cover any flood or rising water. So you have to have a separate policy for that. And there's a 30-day delay before you get to have the benefit. So don't wait till the last minute to get it. And I thought it was really interesting. 2,000 square feet, 1 inch of water, $27,000 or more worth of damage to the contents into your home. 1 inch. It's huge, the amount of impact a little bit of water can have. And since you all know South Florida, I mean, mold grows like this. So that's another impact. This is the one that makes me sad. Over 60% of small businesses, they don't have any formal disaster recovery plan. They're winging it. So they're basically playing with Russian roulette and hoping that they don't end up getting walloped. 40% after they've had a disaster of some kind impact them, they never reopen. Now, don't just think about yourselves, think about all of your clients, all of your suppliers, because we don't live in a vacuum. We're in a whole community. So just because we didn't get impacted doesn't mean that we won't feel some periphery impacts if this happens. Another 25% of businesses might survive that initial disaster, but within a year, because they don't have a plan for recovery, they go out of business. And the scariest part, 3 years later, 75%. So, planning will help you. I've noticed that when I talk to people about arranging for their disaster plans, a lot of them will focus on hurricanes. The good part about hurricanes is it gives us experience for other things. So we know that when we have a hurricane, there's the potential for flooding, there's the potential for wind damage, and there's the potential for power outage. So if you have a blackout, you sort of already have an idea of what you can do for that. So that's the good part. But don't fixate just on a hurricane and a power outage. There's so many other things that can happen, fire, all these other things that can impact your business. And the better plan you have, the more likely you are to survive it. This is my favorite one. I'm not big enough yet. I don't need a plan. Or I have a laptop. I don't need anything else. And nothing ever happens. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on a plan when nothing ever happens. Well, an ounce of prevention or a pound of cure. Because if you wait till it actually happens, you might not be in business after. You might be out looking for jobs as an employee. Continuity planning and disaster planning is simple, and people tend to complicate it. It's really simple. All you're doing is you're asking yourself a question and deciding your answer before you're in a crisis situation. So there isn't a wrong answer. There's just a question and an answer for yourself. If this happens, what do I want to do? And then any steps to do what your plan is. Too many people fixate on, oh my gosh, it's all this big stuff. It can be pretty simple. Just, if this happens, what do I want to do?
Wait! Thanks. Running late? Yeah, traffic was rough this morning. Crisis averted. No crisis, just a little traffic. But what if there had been a lot of traffic? Everyone needs a backup plan. Just like every company needs a business continuity plan. What just happened? Could be a blackout. Completely unpredictable.
Where did you get that? It's important to start your business continuity planning early. How long can you operate without core systems and processes? What if your entire network went down? No communications means no sales and lost
Why
customers.
isn't this thing working? Finally.
Recovery's good.
But 75% of companies without continuity plans fail within 3 years.
Who's in charge during a disaster? Like a fire? Identifying teams and assigning tasks is essential. Everyone needs to know their responsibilities.
What's going on?
It could be a hurricane.
Hurricane?
Weather can badly damage your assets. Planning better prepares your company to recover from any disruption.
Why aren't you getting wet?
Not everyone's under the same umbrella. It's important to test, update, and exercise your preparedness measures.
So, can we share? No.
A business continuity plan for one company won't fit another. That's why it's important for everyone to develop their own plans. Why are you wearing a mask?
Don't forget to plan for the human element. Contingency planning should go beyond natural disasters. Plan for man-made threats too.
Oh, come on.
Great. Hey, let me out.
I'm going to show the videos I'm showing you are your tax dollars at work. This is the Department of Homeland Security. Who'd have thunk it?
What is business continuity planning? Continuity planning means being prepared. Whether it's a critical security incident or a natural disaster, having a business continuity plan in place ensures that you're prepared to react and recover from a business disruption.
We're supplying components to the big satellite integrators, and so what they really need from us is acceptable product on time. Business continuity means taking the steps we need to for our business so that even if there is some form of a disruption, we can still meet those customer needs so that they can keep their product lines moving.
Iowa State University's Center for Industrial Research and Service defines business continuity planning as the process of ensuring that your critical business functions are prepared to react to and recover from a business disruption with minimal amount of impact to your business. A business continuity program is a comprehensive, collaborative approach to protect your business from threats and vulnerabilities. A robust program incorporates specific plans that target different aspects of the continuity process to ensure your organization can respond to and recover from all hazards. These plans fit together like building blocks that support your organization in every phase of a disaster. This proactive approach builds resilience and helps to shield your organization from the impacts of disaster. Why is business continuity planning important?
If an incident happens, it could be a localized incident, it could be a natural disaster, it could be something that happens on the other side of the world, and it could impact your business and shut you down if you're not prepared. A business continuity plan prepares you to react and respond to those incidents and keeps your business operations going.
What's really critical to us is that they have the ability to meet their commitment dates on delivery of hardware into our factory. So one of the aspects we will look at is, do they have adequate backup plans, business continuity plan being one of, that's going to tie into their ability to handle any downturns in their business, be it a equipment failure, be it a weather event or whatever. But we want to make sure that we can keep those piece parts coming in to support our ongoing production. I know of one auto company that was dealing with multiple suppliers in their supply chain, thinking they were covered that way, only to find out that both of those suppliers were buying a key component from the same Japanese supplier who was affected by the tsunami. And so even though they had two suppliers direct, deeper down the supply chain, they were basically shut down by that event.
Some important reasons to develop a business continuity plan are: to protect your reputation. Following a disaster, businesses without continuity plans could lose their reputation with customers as a sustainable and reliable partner. To protect your sales and revenue. Businesses with continuity plans can continue to meet orders on time and maintain productivity even during a disaster. This is due to having effective backup plans, which are developed for people and processes, physical facilities and critical production equipment, and IT systems and data. To keep your customers. Companies today are moving toward business relationships with more reliable vendors who have business continuity plans in place. Many companies refuse to work with vendors who don't have plans. To improve your business. The process of developing a business continuity plan is eye-opening for executives. In many cases, the practice of reviewing business processes with the management team creates unexpected benefits of improving operational performance. To avoid lawsuits and legal liability that can result from inadequate business continuity planning. Failure to plan can result in contractual breaches, such as an inability to deliver product or missed deadlines, breaches of fiduciary duty to shareholders, damages to neighboring properties or the community, injury or death. Your employees depend on you for their livelihoods, and your customers demand reliability. It's true that the chance of a disaster is small. The probability of a tornado is 0.036% in a specific location. The probability of a flood in a 100-year floodplain is 1% in any given year. The probability of a hurricane is 3.2% in a specific location. However, the cost of a disaster is huge. The Joplin, Missouri tornado cost $2.2 billion. Flooding causes more than $2 billion in damages annually. Hurricane Katrina cost more than $125 billion in economic damage alone. These high costs cripple affected companies. After a disaster, 43% of affected companies never reopen. 51% of affected companies close within 2 years. 75% of affected companies without business continuity plans fail within 3 years. An organization that successfully recovers from a disaster enhances its reputation for reliability and dependability. According to a report sponsored by the Sedgwick Group, although all catastrophes have an initial negative impact on value, paradoxically, they offer an opportunity for management to demonstrate their talent in dealing with difficult circumstances. A comprehensive business continuity program supports organizational resilience. Business continuity planning keeps the supply chain running. The typical American multinational corporation buys $3 billion worth of goods and services from more than 6,000 American small businesses, relying on these businesses for more than 24% of their supplies. Without proper business continuity planning by these businesses, a disaster could bring the supply chain to a halt.
The other thing is, the people who are your competitors who aren't planning, you get to go after their market share because you're the one who's up and running still, as opposed to them. So it's not just about protecting what you have, it's about putting yourself forward so that you can gain something because you're the one who is prepared and who is open faster than everybody else. So the components for doing your plan are pretty straightforward. So what are your risks? What's the probability of that risk? And what's the severity? So probably I would put earthquakes as not a very big probability for us to deal with. And not a high probability in the severity. It's not likely that we're going to be dealing with that. However, how I would define a hurricane would be very different. We are more likely to have a hurricane. We are more likely to unfortunately have a severe one. So that's something that more of my time and energy as far as the plan should be spent on. So operations. The things you do that generate money. Can you do them right after a storm? What is your infrastructure? How fast does it need to recover? Which key pieces? Sometimes we have more than one thing that we do in our business or more one product we provide. Is there a way to prioritize this is more important than this? So that's what you're doing. You're reviewing your operations. This is what we do. This is how we do it. This is who's involved and what the steps are. And then you start looking at, okay, this absolutely has to happen. Otherwise, these other 5 things don't. So it's identifying what is the critical path so that you put your priority and recovery on those items. Your employees. 1, you need to know where they are and when they're able to come back and help you. But 2, everybody also needs to be, because you're on a team, everybody needs to have their task. Because you don't want 3 people doing one thing and then something else gets missed entirely because everyone thought somebody else, the famous, somebody else was doing it. So organizing your employees, identifying all the tasks, and putting the right person with the right task. You don't want to put someone who weighs 100 pounds to rearrange the office and pull all the desks into the center. That's going to be a little bit hard for them to accomplish on their own. So identifying your employees and the tasks. Your customers and suppliers. Who are your key customers? Who are your suppliers? Do they have a plan? Or is the fact that they don't have a plan going to impact your ability to recover? And communication. We are such a digital world now. But if you don't communicate, how are they going to know that you're the one who's open? So having a communication plan in place that will apply not only to your employees, your customers, your suppliers, and the general public, because you want them to know that you're the one who's open. So figuring out the language for all those plans and what format you're going to use ahead of time means in the middle of whatever that emergency is, you're not freaking out trying to figure out how you're going to do it. Or after the fact going, I should have done that. This would have been a good idea. So, IT. In my mind, IT is the lifeblood. It is so important. How many of us could run our companies with no internet and no computers? Not really anybody. So if you don't have a plan for all the things that can go wrong with IT, that's really going to impact you. And I've noticed that people will do this. I have everything on a USB. Okay? Where's your USB? Oh, right here. Okay, so if the place burns down or there's a fire, that's not really going to do you much good sitting right there, is it? Or the other one, oh, I backed it up 6 months ago. So there's those aspects for IT, and then there's so many more with phishing and ransom and all of this stuff, which Eric will educate us on shortly. And then there's finance. I always make sure that I have a minimum of $200 in cash in small bills, 1s, 5s, and 10s, beginning of hurricane season. Because, oh, I don't have change, you're just going to have to give me $20 for whatever that was. So you want to have small bills so you have the flexibility. And sometimes the credit cards work and sometimes they don't, so if you have some cash on hand, again, it's for an emergency. It's not expecting that you're going to have to need it, so hopefully you won't need to. Or if you have a credit card that you keep open so that if you did need to have funds for recovery or whatever else, it's available to you. Another one people forget about is payroll. If you have employees, they're going to still want to be paid. So you need to figure out, is this something that we can automate so that it'll automatically go and the process will go through and the payment will done? Or the other question is, are you going to pay them? If the office is closed for 3 weeks, are you going to be able to pay them? How much are you going to pay them? And again, there isn't a wrong answer. It's just figuring out what your answer is before you're in the crisis. So these are the 6 steps. Seem confusing yet? Pretty straightforward, isn't it? It's just getting us all to do it is the challenge. So I put a few scenarios together for you guys to think about. So there's a blackout. It's day 2. All right. What are you doing? How are you functioning? Do you have a temporary office? How are you reaching your clients? Because if it's a 2-day blackout for the whole South Florida area, they're going to be impacted too. 2, building where your office is located. This came from an actual event in Plantation a few weeks ago. One of the strip malls went boom, and a few of the companies that had their offices in that area were not allowed back for 30 days. And from what I've overheard in stories, a couple of them, they may not end up reopening because unfortunately they didn't have anything in the cloud. Everything was in the physical location. They weren't allowed back into the location, so they couldn't do anything. So it's not just a hurricane. It's figuring out what are you going to do if you don't have access to that office. Are you going to make arrangements for backup offices? Nowadays, there's so many of these small offices where if you just need one office, you rent the office and it's got a larger space so you have access to copies and conference rooms and all of that. Well, there's a few companies that will do that for you on an emergency basis. Oh, you need a home base for a month? Here you go. So it's figuring out what is close to me, what is it going to cost, and identifying, okay, that's plan B, because that's going to be a little pricier. This is plan A, in case this happens. Okay, the hurricane's passed, and it looks like Mexico Beach. Nothing's there. This is something that I've noticed that some people don't consider all of that impact. There's nobody around. Where are your clients? Where are your employees? Where are your suppliers? Can you even do what you do if everyone's gone? And how long is it going to take for the infrastructure to be put back in place? So you are that one gentleman who planned for 210-mile-an-hour winds. Go you. Where's everyone else? So you're there. No groceries, water isn't working, electric isn't working. So we have to think of our communities as well. And the best way to start with that is mentioning this to our clients and our suppliers. Do you guys have a plan in place? And as I said, it's not a complicated thing. Just figure out what you're going to do. You know, if that happened to you, from the people I know who are going up there and working on remediation efforts, the place is still wiped out and it's a year later. They don't have any, the guys have to drive 30 miles to the nearest place for them to stay at a hotel, food and all that to get and repair the area that was most affected. So those are some of the bigger questions that can be a little scary, but you want to have that figured out before it actually hits you. Oh, poor Mary. Mary got in a car accident. Mary is really important to you because Mary takes care of all those things that you don't have time for. She does all that administration. She does all of the accounting. She takes care of all those things for you. And she just got in an accident and she's in a coma. And while you do feel bad for Mary and you do want her to recover, in the meantime, who's going to do all those things? Because Mary kept it all in her head. She didn't write anything down. So how are you going to do the things that you need to do on a day-to-day basis for your business and get the stuff that Mary can't do for now covered? Do you even know what needs to be covered? Do you know what the deadlines are, what the timing is? People always think, oh, it's a disaster, it's a hurricane. No, this would be a disaster for many businesses. This one I had a client have happen, and it's very sad. Laptop got hacked. Ransomware, which Eric will go into in more detail. But it wasn't just a matter of, okay, either I have to pay ransom or I'm gonna, because I didn't back up, have to start from scratch. It was also, hi client, yeah, my laptop got hacked and the hackers have all your information now too. So it's not solely how is this impacting you, it's how is it impacting your clients and how do you look to your clients? To your clients, do you look like you know what you're doing, or to your clients, do you look like, I didn't think it would be that happening, it wasn't gonna happen. So there's a lot of different things to consider, but none of them are terribly complicated. It's just figuring out what you want to do so that you don't get caught off guard, because you don't want to be this. The federal government has a ridiculous amount of resources out there. I had a friend say, why would anyone hire you to do an emergency plan for them? They can just go online and do it. And I started laughing at that point because they never do. Nobody has the time, I don't want the energy, there's too many questions, I don't want to figure it out, I don't want to deal with it. There's a lot of stuff, but it's exactly that, a lot of stuff. And you're wading through page after page trying to find that little piece that's going to be useful for your particular situation. So knowing where the resources are ahead of time and how to access them makes it much easier. FEMA has a great resource. IBHS, you're going to get their toolkit after the presentation. Disaster assistance. Those first three have an amazing amount of resources for you when the disaster is upon you. Palm Beach and Miami-Dade counties have really good apps. I've tried them out, they work pretty good. Miami won't let you know where the shelters are ahead of time. They don't want you showing up. You have to put in near me in the app when the event is upon you. You can't plan in advance. They don't want you showing up at any of the shelters. Palm Beach and Broward have a list of their shelters, and Broward doesn't have an app yet, but they have a very good website with a good amount of detail that you can access easily. It's not just you either. It's also all your employees. I don't know if you remember, but Houston had to evacuate for one of the storms. Big evacuation. And a whole bunch of people were caught with a hurricane bearing down on them, and they're all sitting in their cars. They would have been better off in their homes. It's not going to be that bad. Leave early. Much better to leave early. Some of the new people who are new to South Florida went through Irma and didn't have any damage. And they said to me, all that preparation and nothing happened. I said, that's the ideal situation. Nothing happened to you. That's ideal. You want more of those. So planning ahead and getting a feel for what things are going to happen and what resources you have and how you're going to do it. And evacuation routes, this is one of my favorites. I live here and then I'm evacuating there. Have you given any thought to what's in the middle? Is the middle going to be all underwater by the time you get ready to leave? Or are you going to get halfway there and go, uh-oh, how am I going to get where I need to go? So planning and understanding what's between you and where you need to be. I always, during hurricane season, keep my gas tank at no less than half a tank, because I know I get 35 miles to a gallon, so if push comes to shove.
So Lori, you're saying we should invest maybe in a Zodiac boat, so just in case. It's fairly inexpensive, I don't know.
So having a few things in place ahead of time will make life much easier. And I have to tell you, I don't stress when a hurricane comes. I don't. I have my plan in place. I have everything arranged. I have my go bag on hand. I usually spend the time before a hurricane helping everybody else get ready. And I have to tell you, it's much less stressful this way. So there's resources that you can use. I found out Broward County has some wonderful divisions and groups, and they hide it really well. They really do hide it well. So they have a whole division that does nothing but help small businesses in case there's a disaster. Did any of you know that? Half the people don't know. They have a way to do a bridge loan. How awesome is that? How many people know about it? Right? I thought that was amazing. You can get a bridge loan that'll cover 60, 90 days to help you make ends meet until you can get back on your feet, or until the insurance company can pay you, or whatever the case may be. Most people don't know about that. One of the interesting things, though, is as you're trying to apply for that, you better have hard copies of everything they need in hand, because they're not going to say, email it to me. So having a hard copy of some of your documentation in a nice plastic bag and then having it as well in the cloud and electronically is a good idea. Insurance policies have a wide range of what they cover. So some of them will cover business interruption, but there's very particular situations that have to arise and there's documentation you need to provide. If the storm's already happened and you've already trying to claim it and you don't have the backup data from before, how are you going to end up being able to benefit from that policy? What are your deductions? What's the coverage? And the conditions of the claim. Where do I have to call for a claim? Can I do it online? Do I need to do it in paper? How do I have to do it? Corporate documentation, pictures of equipment and furnishings. Every 6 months, every May, go through the pictures. Anything changed? Nope. Okay. November, the end of hurricane season. Anything new? Do I have new equipment? Do I have new offices? Do I have new furnishings? Anything new? Let's take a picture of it then. Because remember, you're not just planning for hurricanes, you're also planning for the fire and the theft and all of these other things. So insurance claims, you need the documentation ahead of time so that you don't have further problems. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen people go through ridiculous amounts of money and pain because they did not take a small amount of time to make sure things were backed up and to make sure that they had steps in place to mitigate damage. Things will happen. You can't control everything, but you can control some things. And more, since we are so digital, if you're the one who doesn't have it organized, they're going to go to a different customer or client. That client's going to go, doesn't seem to have your stuff in order. You might go somewhere else where they do. So it's become more and more important. Eric Chafin with Connections for Business, which is my favorite IT company, they've been in business over 20 years. Over 20, right, Eric?
Since 1977.
77, look at that. When they were on the Flintstones with
It
them.
was back on the punch cards. It was a little bit different back then. So.
But they handle a lot of those problems so that you don't need to deal with them. So I'm going to turn it over to Eric now so that he can give us some information with regard to the IT end of things. Okay.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning. See some familiar faces out here. Lori, thank you for inviting me in. It was great. It's one of our passions. Lori and I talk about this quite a bit in terms of helping businesses out, mitigating risk, and obviously, if you're in the insurance space, very similar mindset as well. It was really interesting, Lori, when you had mentioned Hurricane Andrew. Who again actually felt the Hurricane Andrew went through?
My first hurricane.
It was a few people. So I'm born and raised in Miami, third generation. Grew up surfing in Miami, which kind of is funny to some folks. Like, is that really possible? Anyway, so for my whole life, I was sitting there and I always talked to my dad. You know what? Hurricanes would come by and I'm like, yes, waves, because Florida doesn't really get that many good waves. So I'm literally, in 1992, I'm in Baja, Mexico surfing and had no idea that Andrew came through and swept, had no communication. So came back to San Diego and found out that we were completely crushed. So I still remember flying into Miami and seeing the devastation. And it was literally like no weather. It was probably about a week after it had come through. And right then and there, it was like, wow, this is real. Thank God our family wasn't really affected dramatically, like some of the folks we know down in Homestead. So anyway, but again, wanted just to chat a little bit, share a little bit of my experience. Hopefully this can transcend to you guys, help you guys out. How many folks in here are business owners? Fantastic, awesome, everybody, fantastic. So give you a little bit of background on who I am. So I've been in the IT space probably since the 90s. I worked for a large home builder in Coral Gables and did their IT and managed all their IT initiatives for about 11 years. And with that, we had 15 sites, one main headquarters, and about 500 employees. So you can imagine the risk that we had to make sure that we had plans in place, backups, disaster recovery, continuity planning. It was crucial among all the other policies and things. We were a public company as well. So through my tenure in that, I really transited that over into now the small, medium-sized market. So really taking enterprise IT and bringing it down to you guys to be able to really plan out and mitigate as much risk as you can from an IT side. So from this perspective, how many of, I know we're in here and we obviously want to learn, how many in here actually have a disaster recovery plan? Awesome. Anybody in the midst of moving forward on that? Any documentation that okay, so we got a little bit. So we're in the first step, so that's fantastic. So how many of you folks think, how many business owners I interact with on a monthly basis that I'm coming in contact with that actually, one, have a disaster recovery plan or a backup? Anybody want to take a shot?
25% have it, maybe?
Less than 10%.
Wow.
Less than 10%. When I walk into and talking to business owners, just ask them really good questions and how things are happening, how are you running your business? I'd say 10% actually have their backups and their disaster recovery to where it needs to be from a best practice perspective. So I'll give you an example. Engineering firm down in Miami. We had been going down there a little while back, and I think it was about a month ago, and about a 30-person firm. They've been around for about almost as long as we have, about 40 years. All their data located there physically in their spot. And we started asking the questions, how is your disaster recovery? How do your backups look? How do you recover from a disaster? And the gentleman's like, oh man, we're fantastic. We back up at 12 and we back up at 6. And we're like, this is amazing. This is great. Most people will just back up once and go on with life, and you can roll back some data if you need it. Come to find out, say, hey, do you mind if we take a look? So we take a look. Come to find out, this guy didn't have a backup in 13 months. So I said, hey, John, can you come take a look at this? We show him our findings, and he goes, but I've been getting an email every single day saying my data's been backed up. I go, well, have you tested it? And to Lori's point, in some of these items here, one of the components of the process is testing. You may have everything backed up. You may have everything ready to go. You may even have your document. I have everything, tick and tied. Have you tested it? So to me, that's a failure. That's a total failure. If you have not tested your backup resiliency, and what I mean that I can get into more detail if you like, we could sidebar after this, but literally testing your data and making sure that it's being backed up, but also you can restore it back to its original state, which will keep you where you need to be from a continuity perspective. So just something to think about from that side. A couple other things I want to mention. There's 4 areas we typically look at when we're engaging with our clients and helping them. It's recoverability, reliability, security, and productivity. So what we're really looking at is recoverability. And to Lori's point, a lot of these, how quickly can you recover? What is the cost associated to that? You personally as a business owner. And there's some numbers that are out there. I just like to share with you guys here. So basically just the risk of total downtime. This is an individual survey from ITIC. 98% that were surveyed in this, it's an independent survey, at 1 hour of downtime was equating to $100,000. Wow. That's insane. That's insane. So again, you'd have to run this exercise within your business and say, if I'm down a certain amount of time, what is that impacting my business directly? And that could be hurricane, fire, ransomware, any of the above. And how am I mitigating that risk, especially like in the insurance world? Very, very similar mindset. How am I mitigating my risk, and what's my risk reward for this? So here's another interesting number. 81% was surveyed. 1 hour was worth $300,000. It keeps going up. So a third of who was actually interviewed with this, 1 hour is between 1 to 5 million. So again, you're talking about some other companies that are mixing their medium-sized, mid-market. That's insane. And if you take the actual amount of time and costs associated to putting a good backup system in place, continuity plan in place, we're talking just pennies compared to what you would actually end up losing from a revenue side. So wanted to share a little bit of this in my background and some of these numbers. The one item, and Lori's really, really good at this, and is doing an assessment. So, she comes into businesses all the time and really see the lay of the land and see where the gaps are. Our company is very, very similar in nature, but we look at it from the IT aspect of where those gaps are at. And I would highly recommend anybody in any field to take a look at that and do what we call a health check. Do a health check. We call it an IT health check. You can have an administrative health check, business continuity health check, and actually have a copy here for you guys to take a look at if you like. It literally goes over those 4 components: recoverability, reliability, security, and productivity, and you really, really can know where your gaps are at and where your risks are at. Hey, and you know what? You might find out that you're really good in one area and not so good in another. But again, it's getting a temperature check, just like going to the doctor, just like, you know, going there, hey, how's my cholesterol? You know, oh, I need to be working on this, you know. How are my A1Cs? Same identical type of methodology as if you're going to the doctor. You want to keep your business healthy, just like you want to keep yourself healthy. So, again, I'd be happy to talk to you after presentation, and I do have a sample of our IT audit just so you guys can take a look at what that would look like for your business. So Eric Chafin, thank you so much. Appreciate it.